What is man? Hi, I'm Mike Mason. This is the Immortal Combat Podcast. The Immortal Combat Podcast is a podcast arm of Very Christie. Very Christie is a Catholic lay apostolate devoted to help young men attain the full stature of Christ by growing strong in mind, body, and spirit. If you'd like to learn more about our work, you can check us out online at verychristie.com. All right, gentlemen, this is Intro to Spiritual Theology, Episode 1. This is the first episode of a 6-month series introducing you to the fundamental principles of spiritual theology. I intend to build out more series, more units on top of this one, but we want to lay a nice foundation here so you guys are in a good spot to keep studying and keep growing in wisdom. All right. Last week, I talked about the nature of sacred theology and explained a little bit where spiritual theology fits in that. If you didn't watch that episode, it's just the introductory episode for this series. Check that out in there. But just for those of you guys who did watch it, since it's probably been a week or so, we talked about the fact that sacred theology is a science of God and how created things are related to God. We talked about the fact that sacred theology has two basic branches. One, dogmatic theology, what we believe; moral theology, what we do; and that spiritual theology fits under the what we do part. Okay. So primarily what we're focused on spiritual theology is studying the science of the saints. So spiritual theology is the science of the saints. How do we grow in holiness? Now, the way in which we grow in holiness, we have to know what we believe, dogma, and obviously we need to investigate what we need to do, morals. So we do need to know both. Theology is a unified science, but it does fit under the moral category. All right. What we're going to do this month is we're going to talk about the nature and the end of the human person. Okay, so these first two episodes, today we're going to talk about the image of God. What's it mean to be made in God's image? Next week, we're going to look at the faculties and powers of the soul. The reason why we have to look at that, if spiritual theology is the science of the saints and it's the science of how to grow in holiness, we have to know what is the nature of the thing becoming holy. Okay, we're not talking about the holiness of angels here. We're talking about the holiness of humans. So we have to have an idea of what that thing is so that we can understand why some things make us holy and some things don't. Okay. In weeks 3 and 4, we're going to talk about the goal of human existence, namely to be happy with God in heaven. Why? Because our saintliness and our holiness is always imperfect in this life. It's only complete in the next one. So we have to have a clear understanding, not just what we are. That's what we're going to talk about this week and next week, but where we're going. That's what we'll talk about weeks 3 and 4. Okay. So it should be good stuff. All right. This week, we're going to talk about what is man? What's it mean to be made in the image of God? Okay. Now, when we're thinking about what man is, the church has a view of what the proper view of what man is. Okay. And what we first need to look at is two wrong ways of thinking about man. So to understand the correct answer, sometimes it's helpful to understand the incorrect answer. So we need to look at two extremes that are not correct. Okay, one extreme is called the Platonic and Cartesian views. It's called Platonic because it comes from Plato. It's called Cartesian because it comes from René Descartes, which was a philosopher. These guys and the people influenced by them believe that a human being can be reduced to their soul. So they would say something along the lines of what a human being really is his soul, and the body's just kind of this unfortunate, hanger on type thing. Okay. So they would tend to poo poo the body. The body's not important. We don't need to worry about that sort of thing. The soul's what matters. Okay. Because what a human being is their soul. All right. That is not true. Okay. The other extreme to the other side is the naturalistic and materialistic view that says, I am my body. So if you meet someone who's a Darwinian, evolutionist, materialist type person, they would say a human being is nothing more than their body. Okay. Their brains, their eyes, their heart, their lungs, their DNA, whatever. You are just your body. They would deny there is a soul. This, and the other extreme, is also false. Okay. So if both of these extremes are false, what's the correct view? The correct view is that man is a soul body composite. Okay. Our soul animates our body. Our soul is the thing that makes our body alive. So this thing here that's talking to you and wiggling my fingers in the camera, what's animating or making this body alive is my soul. When I die, My soul is leaving my body. Now, you can study human physiology and go get an MD and become a doctor and learn lots about how the body works. But the soul explains why it's alive rather than dead. Okay. So the soul animates the body. Now, because human beings have bodies, okay, that means we also have appetites and desires and emotions because those things come with having a body. So we have appetites for food, drink, and sex. We have desires to do, accomplish difficult tasks. We have emotions where when we feel sad, we cry. When we feel happy, we laugh, things like that. Those emotions, appetites come with the fact that we have bodies. Because we have a soul, we also have an intellect and a will. Okay. So these powers come with having a body and also having a soul. Now, next week, we're going to talk about those powers that come with that, because what it's going to mean to grow in holiness is we have to perfect both the powers of the soul and the body. They both have to be perfected. So to be able to understand why the church gives certain advice to grow in holiness, you have to understand what we are. But we'll get to that next week. The second part of this mini lesson is, what does it mean to be made in the image of God? Okay, so now that we know we're a soul body composite, what does it mean to be made in God's image? Okay, to give an account for the progressive character of the Christian life and in growing in holiness. So the fact that you can make progress in holiness, theologians say that the image of God is impressed upon us in 3 ways. Okay, so let's start with the most basic way. The natural image of God, okay, is the image of God that every human being has by nature. That's the natural image. Okay. All right. So everybody, if they're human, has the natural image. And there's things that come with this natural image, namely our ability to think, right? So we can think about God, and we can think about right and wrong, and we can think about science and math and all kinds of things. Okay. That comes with this natural image. And you can do a lot of cool things with this natural image. But this natural image does not have grace. A person in the natural image of God is not friends with God. Okay. Which is why we need a second image of God, because the second image of God is what's called the image of grace. The image of grace is the supernatural image of God. Okay. So when a person is baptized, when a person is in a state of sanctifying grace, they get God's images impressed on them in a new way. So a person who's in a state of sanctifying grace and a person who is not, okay, the person with sanctifying grace has an image of God that the other person just does not have. Okay. Why? Because a person in the state of grace has been raised to sonship with God. They're part of God's family. If you think of it this way, they get kind of like they get the benefits of family life. They get to know the inside baseball of everything. Okay. So the image of grace is when a person is in friendship with God and a member of God's family. We are going to spend our lives, God willing, in this image. Now, let's say we die on our deathbed. We die in a state of friendship with God. We die in a state of grace. When we pass on to the next life, we get a third image, which is the image of glory. And that is the finest and fullest state of the soul when we see God face to face. And we'll talk about that more in episode 4. Okay. Why do you need to keep these in mind? This, to explain and understand the progress of growing in holiness, you have to understand these 3 images. When we are born naturally, we have the natural image of God. We are not friends with God, but we do have his image on us. And we can do some cool stuff there, but we're not in friendship. We can't grow in holiness. We can't do anything to get to heaven. Through our baptisms, when we're converted, we enter into a state of grace, and we get this new image impressed upon us. We are friends with God now. In that image of grace, now we can do things to grow in holiness. Because once God infuses grace into our soul, we can start doing things to merit or earn eternal life. This is what spiritual theology is going to be about, is let's get into that state of grace and start growing. Okay. So spiritual theology is a science of that second image. And then God willing, God gives us the grace of what's called final perseverance. This is that we die in a state of grace. We then will go into glory in heaven. So the progressive nature of the spiritual life moves through these images. All right. So just as biologically we grow through phases, spiritually we grow through phases. Okay. Very similar. Okay. Just like biologically, if you guys want to, get strong and start lifting weights or something like that, you're not going to notice a lot of difference from day to day. But if you do it, day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out, year in and year out, you're going to start building some muscle. Holiness works the same way. Okay. When you have a plan and you start working out in here, you're going to start growing in holiness. You're going to start changing and developing. And so one day you'll turn around and be like, holy cow, like I'm starting to, resemble a saint a little bit here. Okay. So understand this movement's important. Now, the application, because I want to wrap up here. We're butting up against, try to keep these between 10 and 12 minutes. So what's an application for this week? Guys, in the Viri Christi, we have a rule of life, right? Work out 3 times a week at least. Study your faith a couple times a week. Set some time aside to grow in your faith and grow in wisdom. Daily prayer routine, morning prayer, afternoon or midday prayer, evening prayer. Try to get some decades of the rosary in. The reason why we have this rule is so that you can make progress. This is the plan of sanctification that we share in together. Okay. And so by doing this together, we can all unite under this vision of becoming holy. So I want to encourage you guys, okay, work out your salvation. Okay. Work at it, put the time in, and it'll start to pay off. It's just like building muscle. If you don't work your muscles out, they atrophy and they get weak and mushy. Okay. If you start lifting some weights, they'll get hard and tough. You'll be strong. Spiritual life's the same way. Okay. So work those muscles, work those spiritual muscles, keep plugging away, and God will definitely take care of you. But all right, we are butting up against that 12-minute mark. Guys, all of the notes are online. So if you guys want to follow along while you're listening to these and with the quotes I'm giving and things like that, I put the notes on the website for you guys. I want you to learn this stuff. So if you think about it, maybe while you're listening, pull those up in front of you and read along. Might help you out a little bit. But we're going to wrap up there. Next week, faculties of the soul. All right. I hope you guys have a blessed week. See you next time.